A historic shooting performance for the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Ryan Rollins game spoils Mike Budenholzer's return to Milwaukee. Most importantly, gets the Bucks back in the win column. Frank and I break down the game after this on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined by Frank Madden. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day and for checking out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. If you have not done so yet, you can still sign up for free at lockedondaily.com and get your day started with the all-new free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Frank, there was a lot of lead up to this one, not quite as much as when the schedule came out because of how both teams are performing, but Mike Budenholzer makes his return to Milwaukee. I do want to get to the overall vibe from that and the vibe in the arena tonight, but we'd be remiss to not start with what the Bucks did offensively and how this was teetering on disaster. No other way to put it. On a night where you shoot 69%, which is a franchise record, the highest shooting percentage in a game since the Clippers 27 years ago did this to the Raptors, and you had to fight to win this game. That was the troubling part in the mix.
Well, it's funny. When I saw some of the shooting line stats for both teams, I thought back to Game 5 in the 2021 Finals when you looked at I forget what the Suns' shooting splits were in that game, but they were not shooting splits that I'm guessing a home team has put up and lost an NBA Finals game. Because both teams just shot the lights out in that one. And this one, I mean, Camille and I talked about it after last game. Bucks shot 85% in the first quarter of the last game. And, ultimately had that really bad third quarter. Tonight, they never had the stinker quarter. And that's good because they couldn't have afforded that. Again, frustrating in the sense that, we haven't seen as many Bucks wins as we'd like this year. And when they have won, it has not been typically with the level of consistency. We're not expecting them to dominate every night, but, games like this where you expect when you have it working like this offensively, you hope that you can win a game like this very comfortably. And that didn't happen. But, obviously at this point, no Dame 4-game losing streak. This team just badly needed a win. I badly needed a win. We badly needed a win. All of our listeners and viewers across the world badly needed a Bucks win. And I thought, this felt like, Justin, like for the baseball fans out there, the idea of the stopper pitcher, right? The pitcher in a playoff series that comes in and, you hand him the ball and you need that win, Game 7, or if you're down, whatever, you desperately need a really good pitching performance to get a win. I think that was kind of what it felt like Giannis did tonight. And, 20 points in the first half, 17 in the second half, 11 assists. Just felt like, again, even with Phoenix trying to send bodies his way when they could get to him fast enough, they couldn't stop him. Obviously 1v1, they were too small. And when they sent that extra help early enough, Giannis, I thought, made really good decisions for the most part in terms of passing and, finding other guys who, as we were saying tonight, didn't tend to miss many shots. And a lot of that was because of really good passing from him. So, Giannis has been doing his part in these games that they've been losing. Obviously, the game in Denver, obviously he didn't play, but, you can't look at his numbers in March and say like, well, this guy's he's slumping, right? He had obviously a spell there after the All-Star break where it wasn't maybe typical Giannis, whether that was injuries, something else, again, missing playmaking, which certainly he doesn't have a lot of help right now. So to see him over the past, week or 10 days begin to really kind of exert his will and show who he is and what he does, and that, even with all the noise around him, he can still be that dominant, best in the world type of guy. Again, just we try to do it regularly. Giannis appreciation. This is another one of those nights where, you look at him and you just say like, that's the best player I'm ever going to watch in my lifetime as a Bucks fan. And you just, tip your cap to him. And another clutch block in the last, I don't know if it was last minute or 2 minutes, after, I think it might have been after another Nick Richards offensive rebound.
Yeah.
So yeah, just another night of Giannis doing Giannis things, and certainly without him doing that, nothing else would have mattered. So yeah, one more reason to be thankful that Giannis Antetokounmpo is on our team and not somebody else's.
That shooting performance you mentioned, 55% and 68% from three for the Suns, and lose Game 5 in the finals on the Jrue Holiday play. Yeah, I mean, it was trending towards that where you shoot. It was just a shade. At one point, it was 90% in the first quarter in the loss to the Hawks, 70% at halftime, and you're losing by 7. And then I knew they were efficient, but I remember at one point in the third quarter looking up and seeing, man, they're shooting 66% right now, and I think that's when they built up the lead to 22. And then you looked in the fourth quarter and saw it's still in the high 60s, and this is all of a sudden a 5-point game. Like, what is going on here? Doc talked after the game too, and I mean, look, he did say earlier in the season when they were 2-8, and in that stretch, like, I can feel the run coming, and we're about to turn the corner. I can see it. I don't know how much of that was hopium. We did see them go on a run. But he said after the game tonight, like, we're so close to being a very good and great offense. I can see it there. We referenced the efficiencies in the past couple of games. Like, we're close to turning that part on. And Ryan Rollins is a big part of that. I wanted to get to this a little bit later, but you mentioned Giannis' stat line. I mean, we have to get into what Ryan Rollins did, because 3 straight games that he sets a career high in points scored. Look, you'll see that occasionally when it's like a first-year guy in his first 5 games. He goes from 3 to 6 to 7 points. But for Ryan Rollins, 23 points tonight. Doc really praised his defense after the game and said, look, I know, let's take it with a grain of salt of who he's referring to, but hey, he took the Suns point guard out of the game and basically said he's got to play off ball. We've seen that from Ryan Rollins. What he continues to give you as a spacer is incredibly important. And he's gotten much better at just scoring in traffic and getting to the rim, getting into the paint and creating those looks that, look, I'm not trying to say the Bucks are in a better spot to have Ryan Rollins starting and playing than Damian Lillard. But the defense component, that's what you're going to have to lean into. And if Ryan Rollins is going to knock down shots, he's going to get open looks in the playoffs. These games are important, what he's showing you.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had the discussions about the 5th starter all year long, right? There's been different incarnations of the starting 5 around Giannis and Brook and Dame. But, Rollins was always kind of like a sleeper pick, who, he's a, sort of error minimization guy, in the sense that, he's versatile defensively, can defend the point of attack. He's not small. So, and he's got, a good wingspan, so he can defend, wings to an extent. Right. And his 3-point shooting is, very solid, catch and shoot guy, not an off the dribble type guy, but certainly as a catch and shoot sort of, put him in the corner, space him out, he can do that a bit. And, the biggest play he made tonight, I think, were they up 4 or 3 when he drove down and finished with kind of his signature move now, is driving to his left and finishing with his left hand.
With the left hand, yeah.
Which is not his dominant hand, but he, we're spoiled because we get to watch Giannis every night. Maybe the best, offhand dunker / finisher the sport's ever seen. Not a skill though, Justin. Nobody talks about it. So maybe we're just sort of numb to that sort of thing. But yeah, Rollins, I mean, he's been really good at that this whole year. And it seems like, with this kind of run that he's been on, it has been impressive just to see how often he's able to use that quickness and athleticism to get to the rim and finish. And again, I mean, it's hard with him because, I mean, like, he's not a put the ball in his hands and, dribble around and break down the defense and create easy shots for other guys or himself, like, consistently. But, he is he has gotten very good at kind of picking his spots and being opportunistic, and taking the fact that the defense doesn't key on him in a way that they would, a Giannis or Dame, and take advantage of that and use it to his advantage. And obviously, shooting the 3-ball really well of late certainly is the big cherry on top for him. And he hit at least one big 3 in the fourth quarter, in addition to kind of the play I mentioned. So yeah, it's been really great to see, right? I mean, there have been a lot of encouraging stories, I think, with young guys getting run, and this hasn't always necessarily been a consistent story throughout the year. Obviously, Ajax sort of had his spell. AJ Green, I think, has had like a consistently pretty good year kind of throughout. Even his recent shooting struggles really is not. I was amazed at how good he's shot it over the last month, even when it seemed like he was in a slump. It was like basically a 2-game slump, and then he kind of snapped out of it. And obviously he's missed some games. He's missed the last couple of games as well, which I think for this team right now hurts. So yeah, I mean, Rollins having his breakout, AJ Green obviously making strides. I think those guys have made really good cases for being the 5th starter, each of them. And, you kind of you have some optionality there, which, I mean, at this point you need Rollins starting because Damian Lillard is not, like close to coming back, and who knows if we'll see him again. It was good to see him at practice today wearing basketball shoes. But, I think my understanding of that is, I don't know I don't know if there's been an update on like kind of his blood thinner status, but it's like, it's not like he can't do stuff right now, but the risk is like, if he were to like get hit hard or something like that, bleeding and things like that would be very risky. So don't want to read too much into that, but I mean, while he's out, it's a golden opportunity for Rollins and obviously Kevin Porter, who had the huge fourth quarter in the loss last game. And so if those guys can just figure out how to bottle the best versions of themselves and do that more often than, being anonymous, and being consistent defensively, which I think Rollins has been way better at and more consistent at than Porter has, you at least have a chance to finish the regular season in a positive way, especially with the schedule lightening up.
Yeah, he's we'll save it for after the break, but some additional thoughts on Ryan Rollins and what we've seen of late. But in the interim, what the Bucks are going to have to manage. And there's one thing that once again bubbled up tonight, and it's been the case for the past 9 games now, that you get the sense this ain't going to change at least until Tuesday to start to take a step in the right direction here. So we'll get into that.
I feel an offensive rebounding conversation coming on.
Into that conversation coming up next here on Locked On Bucks. Time to talk to you about our friends at Prize Picks. Baseball season's in full swing. There's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. It's the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. This week, you might pick Aaron Judge with those new Yankees bats to hit more than 1 home run, or Shohei Ohtani to steal more than 1 base. It's simply that easy. You set up a lineup, it takes less than 60 seconds. And when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. And take advantage of Taco Tuesday, where Prize Picks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Yes, the offensive rebounding, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, Ryan Rollins, I mean, look, I think at this point, he's moved past Kevin Porter Jr. in what he gives you consistently. You mentioned the 20-point quarter that KPJ had on Friday night. There's still a lot of inconsistency, and there's still a lot of moments where you just think that kind of trends towards some of the numbers that I saw with the Clippers. He'll have those flashes. He'll have the flashes on the other end. Ryan Rollins, you mentioned it. He's just been more stable, that you know what you're going to get on both ends of the floor. And, I think the biggest area where he deserves credit is you just think about everything that's been placed in front of him throughout this season. Wasn't in the rotation. You had Dame and DeLon Wright and other guys in front of him. He just kind of slowly carved out a way in garbage time and in practice and made an impact, fought his way into the rotation, gets his first start, injures his shoulder. Doc talks about he can have surgery. If he does, it's probably going to end his season, or he can tough it out. You can see the wrap that he's still wearing and playing through that. Opted to play through that. Then I'm sure it was hanging over him with all the conversations we were having about, hey, Ryan Rollins has X amount of days left on his two-way deal. And it did seem like he was kind of starting to hit a wall. I don't know how much that factored in. You make the Kevin Porter Jr. trade too, where you bring in somebody in front of him. It would have been very easy for Ryan Rollins to clearly hit a wall and just, well, we'll see what he can build upon next year. But he's just, the old adage of stay ready. So when you're called upon, you can take over. That's what we've seen. I think that's the biggest thing he deserves an immense amount of credit for, because, we kind of joked about it a couple of times during the game broadcast tonight, but man, where would this team be right now without Ryan Rollins in some of these games? And even hey, if I told you in the beginning of the year, you would beat the Phoenix Suns because your big three had 84 points in this game. And then I tell you the big three is Giannis, Brook Lopez, and Ryan Rollins. You'd think, what? So the Bucks are bad, huh? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, I remember watching him in Vegas last summer, and obviously he was here at the end of last year too, which, is really important because that means the Bucks have restricted free agent rights on him this summer. He only signed through the end of the year, which I think was his choice. Bucks could have given him this year and next year at the minimum. Instead, I think him and his agent said let's take rest of the year. He'll be a restricted free agent. And the good news is the Bucks can match if he gets a deal for, whatever. I think he's certainly, if he continues the way he's going, he'll have earned that. And certainly an interesting decision here with the shoulder, right? Like, I don't know how long he might miss if he were to get off-season shoulder surgery or whatever it might be. But certainly a guy that, if you're the Bucks, you want to kind of lock up for, the next few years, ideally, as an up and coming, young role player who knows, right? Who knows how much, more he could be, right? Could he be, a 13 to 15 point per game guy who gives you, 4 or 5 assists and plays really good defense, right? Like, we'll see, right? I think that's obviously would be an exciting thing for a team that has been just starved for young talent, fresh blood, two-way, guys who have good positional size, and he's kind of got all those things. So yeah, it's been really good to see. And I think, as you said, it's like what we always come back to, right? The season is really long. And so we've kind of called that out for a lot of these guys, right? Like at the beginning of the season, if guys aren't playing, just wait, guys will get hurt. People go into slumps, team goes into slumps, coach needs to try something else out. And things have kind of a way of, working out that, if you're worth anything, you're going to get some chances. And then the question just comes down to, do you take advantage of those chances? And it's hard, you're not getting consistent minutes to rise to that occasion, because a lot of guys do need consistency and flow in a well-defined role in order to play well. But the guys, that ultimately kind of stick around in the NBA are guys that can deal with not having everything perfectly put on a silver platter for them, and, not being guaranteed 25 minutes a night to always work through their problems, or whatever it might be. So yeah, kudos to Rollins. Up and down first couple of years in the NBA, some changes of scenery, finally lands in Milwaukee, and, has obviously put himself in a position here for hopefully having a home for, the next, hopefully 2-3 years at least. And we'll see. His style of play is the kind of style of play you want, to have going into the playoffs, right? As challenging as the playoffs may be, as much as Ryan Rollins may be in a more expanded role than, we would want him to have to be because of the Dame situation, the profile of a Ryan Rollins type player, the two-way, being able to put on the deck a little bit, being able to shoot a bit. Those are the kinds of guys you want to be able to fill out your rotation with. But, now the challenge for him is going to be having a much, heavier diet and heavier load. But I think the good news, where Doc has, I think, realizes when Giannis has been healthy, I think he's realized like Rollins is a good complement, because Rollins is more of that sort of safety valve type guy. He's not the kind of, over dribbling, needs the ball in his hands type guy that Porter is more of. And so he's kind of a more natural fit alongside Giannis. And, tonight it was interesting. It'd been a minute since, even Giannis had a game in the plus column in terms of net rating. And tonight, the starting five was all fantastic. And so that group did a great job. And certainly it all started on the offensive end, and Rollins was a big part of that.
And Brook Lopez too, who celebrated his 37th birthday in the
Amazing
win. Incredible. We will get to that rebounding discussion, but I do want to talk about Mike Budenholzer's return and the overall feeling and vibes that surrounded that. So we'll get into that conversation coming up next. Well, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When you start using Monarch, you'll realize how much you were spending on food delivery. You can budget even smarter and save more money. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And it makes for easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your first year. All right. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the rebounding is obviously something that stands out here, Frank. And really, it's a couple of areas that the Bucks have just been drilled in for the last handful of games. The trend, Suns doubled the Bucks up in points, the hustle categories, essentially points scored off of turnovers and second chance points via offensive rebounds. It was 50-25. The margin was like 45-20 in each of the games over the weekend, too, against the Knicks and the Hawks. Those are the areas that turn close games into blowouts, and teams like the Phoenix Suns that are down some offensive firepower, that's how you make it a close game and say, well, here's some transition baskets. We're going to turn the ball over. Second chance points off of rebounds. And the Bucks have fallen victim to that quite a bit here lately. There is a component. I'm not saying it's all. There is a component to it that's bad luck, where you get long rebounds. And especially with fewer bigs, when we see Giannis switched out onto perimeter guys or taking on those assignments, you got no bigs around the rim to rebound. So that's a part of it too. But since, and I'm not saying this is the only reason, but since losing Jericho Sims, the Bucks have dropped to 30th in rebounding rate at 45%. They've gone from tied for first in defensive rebounding to 27th in that stretch. So Doc kind of joked about it before the Hawks game too, of, Red Auerbach always told me, get the ball and don't give up the ball. I mean, that really is the biggest problem that we're seeing here, is you're just not closing possessions. And the Suns almost had as many offensive rebounds as defensive rebounds in this game tonight.
There's some really weird rebounding stats these last two games. I think it was after the first quarter against Atlanta. Like, the Bucks had 0 offensive rebounds, and the Hawks only had 1 defensive rebound in the first quarter, which is,
well, when you shoot 90%,
nearly impossible. I think the Bucks missed 3 shots, and 2 of them, I guess, went out of bounds and were team rebounds or something, and only one of them was actually grabbed by one of the 2 teams. Very weird. I think at halftime of this game, the Bucks had 8 defensive rebounds and the Suns had 6 offensive rebounds. So it was like basically every missed shot was a 50-50 ball, and it got slightly better in the second half, but not much. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue. I mean, I think I mean, we have drilled on this idea of possessions and the Bucks sort of losing the game on the margins and losing the math game because they just give the other team way more chance. Like every game, the other team has more bites at the apple in terms of just, shot attempts, than the Bucks do. And again, it's this combination of, what creates extra possessions? It's turnovers and rebounds, right? And so even when the Bucks were doing really well as a defensive rebounding group, they didn't get any offensive rebounds. They've been the worst offensive rebounding team all year, and they've oftentimes been more turnover prone than opponents. So the other team just consistently gets more shots. And so, tonight was almost a caricature where you literally have to have like the greatest shooting performance in what was it, 1990? Did I see that correctly? It was 1998 was the last time a team last time a team shot as high as the Bucks did tonight. And I'm guessing that whoever, I forget who it was in 1998, but I'm guessing the kind of true shooting percentages were probably way better for the Bucks this night because they took so many more threes now than they did 27 years ago. So so yeah, I mean, I will say this, at least it felt like the Bucks, and they had way too many turnovers again. It felt like most of them were dead ball turnovers.
Yeah.
I mean, was it a half dozen illegal screens? Like just crazy number of illegal screens, travels, balls thrown out of bounds. By the way, Brooke, I love Brooke Lopez, but like, why does he screen with his hands all the time? He always like puts his hands on the guy, and it's like he's like riding the guy. It's like it just seems way too obvious that what he's doing when he's doing that. And he got hit at least 3 times for illegal screens in this game, maybe. It was bad, and I mean, thankfully, like on at least one of them, like they got Nick Richards immediately coming back the other way.
Kuz baited him,
because illegal screens kind of always get called in twos typically. So that happened at least, but yeah, just not being able to kind of clean up the boards. I mean, I will say this. I think I thought Phoenix did a really nice job. I thought they seemed to manipulate the Bucks using the Bucks sort of switching to get smaller guys on like Nick Richards down low. And a lot of times you saw Giannis getting baited to switch and to be defending on the perimeter, where obviously he's relatively comfortable doing that. But especially in the Bucks' current situation where, unless Brooks out there a lot, but sometimes Brooks not out there. And then you've got, Kyle Kuzma or a guard trying to box out, big guys. And it just, we saw it, right? Like Nick Richards just was basically, tapping Ersan Ilyasova style for putbacks all night long. So yeah, I mean, I thought the Bucks just, the Suns, I think, manipulated them well. The other thing they did well, I think, was in terms of like using screen and roll action, using a 2-man game to get Grayson Allen open as sort of the third guy, either in the corner or on the wing. And I mean, some of Grayson's shots were like 30-footers. So I mean, some of it's like you can only, you're only going to defend a guy so far out, but he obviously had a lot of shots where he was able to really measure them, and that was, what was a big part of getting them back in the game and making it, closer than certainly Doc and the team would have wanted in the fourth quarter. So yeah, it was, again, just a lot of the same stuff that we've been concerned about. And, just another reason why, especially since Jericho Sims went out, they need, at this point, they just really need to get to Bobby Portis's return so that they have that size back and that they can, go back to playing with more traditional bigs, a more traditional big rotation,
Yeah. I mean, not just Giannis is on the floor now, Brooke comes off the floor and vice versa. Yeah. And in the last 3 games of the 4-game losing streak, Well, no, in the last this game included, and the last 2 games of the 4-game losing streak, the Bucks opponents took 48 more field goals than they did. That on average, you're giving up 16 more bites at the end. Like, you would expect to go 0-3 during that stretch when that's the case. So that's the biggest thing that obviously has to clean up here in that other game.
I will say this, Justin. I don't know what your thought was. I did feel like the effort was a lot better tonight.
Yes.
Like, I felt like Atlanta, the blow-bys, just letting guys get free runs at like put-back dunks and stuff like that, like felt.
I mean, that was like
more,
shades of the 2-8 start.
Yeah, that felt like much more egregious. I think, didn't Kyle Kuzma refer to it as like looked like they were quote unquote bullshitting, which was a very refreshing but also problematic that like he would cop to that. Especially coming off the Knicks loss, that I was just like, yeah, we were just kind of, what do you sorry. So I thought tonight was it felt like a lot of like the Suns rebounds were more just, long misses,
long rebounds,
kind of random stuff like that. And then like some of these situations where it's like, you had a small guy boxing on a big down low, less of like just, boy, our guys just didn't work tonight. So again, still not acceptable. They still need to figure out a way to try to solve that. But it's easier to have that conversation after you get a much needed win than after that Hawks game, which was just dreadful.
And by the way, so that the last time we saw a percentage this high was March 13th, 1998, when the Clippers beat the Raptors. The Clippers had a 76% true shooting in that game. They won the game by 32 points, which when you shoot to that level, you would expect the margin is not. Yeah, you technically won by 10, but like this is a 5.2 possession game for the final minute. So that was kind of the good thing you won, that we can kind of forget about what the margin was and how close this game was. I mentioned too in closing, the big thing was Mike Budenholzer's return to Milwaukee. Obviously, there was a lot of interest in this, a lot more interest when the schedule was released and earlier in the season. And I think there's a couple of things. Number one, you're on a 4-game losing streak. The Suns have been dreadful. There's no Kevin Durant. There's no Bradley Beal. The vibes I get from that Phoenix team is dead man walking, and it feels like they're certainly going to make another change. The numbers would suggest the Suns are not going to make the playoffs. They're 2 back in the loss column now with a pretty tough schedule, and you got to assume Kevin Durant's probably not playing again in the regular season. It was just a weird setting because of all of that. It didn't quite have the same, appeal. You go back to, when the Bucks played the Suns last week, we talked about it on the show. The Suns didn't allow any Bucks media or Eric or Jim or any Milwaukee media members to ask any questions. Mm-hmm. And I wondered, in those settings, when you're the home team, you have a microphone and you determine who gets it. It's tougher in the scrums where it's just, okay, who's next? It was weird to hear the tone. We know how Bud is, but I don't know. It was a weird vibe that he just did not even want to entertain the questions about, hey, you're in Milwaukee. How does this feel? And you look up at the rafters and see you won a championship. What emotions are you feeling? And we got the typical Bud, respect the question, but I don't know. It struck me as is there still some ill will there? Is he still pissed over the firing?
Well, and yeah, I mean, it is weird. I think coming into the year, probably a lot of us and probably a lot of us were wary of oh man, and Phoenix had that really quote unquote hot start to the year where they won it was all close wins. It was all
it
stuff
was the
going
opposite
their way.
of what they did last year.
Right. And I remember looking at that and being like, okay, they're not beating anybody convincingly. So let's see what happens when, KD gets his inevitable 3-week hamstring injury and blah, blah, blah. Right. And, sure enough, that's what happened. Right. As soon as they had any injuries, the kind of fragility of that team started to kind of seep through. And again, I didn't think they were going to be this bad. I thought they would be a high 40s win team. I picked them in our preseason Locked On Bucks over under poll, so not like I foresaw that they would struggle to this extent, but But yeah, I've been surprised that they've been as bad defensively as they have been, because they were very respectable last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured Bud could at least kind of systematically drill him to at least be,
Close to
an
10 or
average,
something,
something like that. Yeah. But obviously, it hasn't worked out. And I mean, I have no idea. Like with Bud, it's like, are they really going to fire, another respectable coach after 1 year, when it seems like a KD trade, or even like a Booker trade, could be in the offing as well? It's really just kind of how much does Matt Ishbia want to just keep like doubling down on, like, believing that he's got the roster that nobody else in the league would trade for,
28 other teams or whatever it was.
So I don't know,
I mean,
but yeah, I don't, and I mean, so it's like, bottom line though, it's like, as Bucks fans, like, I mean, I always respected Bud. I thought people kind of were too hard on him. So I was very wary coming into the year of like, oh man, if Bud gets off to a good start and the Bucks are like, like, we're gonna hear, the whole like, well, they never should have fired Bud stuff. But I mean, I always just come back to, I think we've talked about this, Justin, like, I think the vast majority of NBA firings, like, teams get the firings right. It's hiring that's really hard.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at like coaching changes, it's usually never like errors of you fired the guy you shouldn't have. It was you hired a guy you shouldn't have. And I think that's exactly what the Bucks issue was. And obviously they're, arguably still paying for the fact that, they fired Bud and didn't replace him with, somebody who wasn't Adrian Griffin.
Didn't seemingly have a concrete plan of, we're moving on to this instead. It's not just, it's in any walk of life, like, it sets you back so much if you make the wrong hire in any line of work that you're in. And that's, I think, what we're seeing right now, what we're experiencing from going back to that summer when the Bucks made that change. So yeah, I was really looking forward to this game just to see, like, all right, what's the reception that Bud's going to get? And like, even probably naively thinking, I know how he handled it in Phoenix, but like, there's going to be, it's like opening day for the Brewers. We're going to have more media members that are out here that usually don't cover the games, that are here to try to get a soundbite from Bud. And we'll at least get something here. And the fact that we didn't. And I heard from one of our friends too, who said, I got a lot of dirty looks from a lot of the Phoenix PR staff. Like, when I walked in here, that like, this is just such a weird vibe that's going on here. And even like, people were complaining about the Bucks social post, and like in the game when they put up the graphic of like, welcome back, Bud. It was very brief, of like 15 seconds. Hey, Bud's back. Best of luck. And he did get a pretty overwhelmingly positive reception. But like, the whole night was just kind of like, it's kind of weird for the guy that's one of the greatest coaches in franchise history and one of two coaches to win a championship for this organization.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, like, he's got a case as like the most
greatest
important coach in the history of the franchise, given the only
Giannis went on to, and everything else.
Yeah, only one other guy won a championship, and obviously there will be people, obviously, like Nelly was kind of the other guy that you would kind of call out, but yeah, I mean,
Chris Ford, another one,
Larry K, but yeah, I don't know, it's weird. It was also weird. I got caught by surprise. I didn't realize it was a 6:30 start, so it was an early start, and my sense, I obviously was not in the building tonight. My sense was it was a late arriving crowd. It appeared to be. Was that fair to state? I don't know. When it seemed like there were more empty seats.
I mean, it looked like it was going to be a late arriving crowd, and I wonder if that portion just got lost and didn't make, because like, that was the other noticeable thing of like, again, you're on a 4-game skid. The Suns have been dreadful. There's no KD. That there wasn't a whole lot of energy in the building.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, it's kind of like at the point now where it's like the Bucks have to kind of re-earn that energy to an extent, and so, I mean, thankfully they get to win tonight, and now you go to Philly, and obviously the job there is very clear against a Philly team that obviously is, decimated and is not going to feel sorry for
begging you to win.
Yeah, and is not going to feel sorry for you not having Damian Lillard. So it's really, what plan do the Bucks have for Quentin Grimes?
Justin
One
Edwards.
one of the guys I really liked. I really was like. I remember a year ago at the trade deadline being like, "Oh, can we get a Marjon Beauchamp for Quentin Grimes deal? Like change the scenery deal?" And obviously now it seems like ridiculous. But
well, I mean,
still
if only we would have known. All we had to do was call Nico Harrison.
exactly. Yeah. Well, and it was weird. Like the Pistons kind of gave him away for kind of nothing to the Mavericks, and then the Mavericks obviously like gave him away for the artist formerly known as Caleb Martin. So yeah, strange thing. So hopefully Bucks do not feel the wrath of Quentin Grimes. Hopefully the Sixers and Bucks both get what they want out of the game here on Thursday. And
the Grit and Grimes 76ers.
Chance for the Bucks to lock up a winning season on Thursday, Justin. Hashtag tweets from the Jason Kidd era.
And I think they'd clinch a playoff spot and not just postseason spot if they do so. Yeah, that's 3 of your next 5 games are games against teams that are saying, we don't want to win this. So, like, don't make this close. Just we'll roll over and take it with the Sixers, and then 2 against the Pelicans, who have already shut everyone down. And that's the last thing to point out, too, is I don't know about you. I mean, if they would have lost, then it becomes interesting. But I was never
interesting. in the worst way
well,
possible.
This part becomes it in the grand scheme, it's not interesting, but I was never overly concerned with the Bucks are going to drop into the play-in tournament. Like, guys, the way that math works, it still is going to take like the Bucks going horrendous down the stretch and the Hawks playing red hot. This doesn't clinch it, but it basically slams the door that it's a 5-game margin now with 7 games remaining. So you can at least breathe that sigh of relief.
Let's hope they take care of business against the Sixers and Pelicans, my friend. But yeah, and then I mean, if they do obviously win most of these games, kind of in Detroit, I know they have OKC tomorrow. Did I see that correctly?
One of these days, yeah. I think
and like Cade, I think is out or doubtful. So yeah, I mean, again, there's a very good chance that those 2 games against Detroit to end the season, could
decide who's 5th.
And I don't know. We'll see when we get there. We'll see how much I can muster to care, Justin. It was the battle for 4th just was a lot more exciting to me, but it just Indiana just keeps bullshitting these close wins away. So yeah.
Well, that's as good a spot as any to wrap it up here. The Bucks win. They have a historic shooting night. Ronnie Rollins has a career night. Bud returns to Milwaukee, and who cares?
Giannis does Giannis stuff.
Giannis with another, by the way, 37-point double-double. That'll do it for today's show. For Frank, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.